Yes. Welcome. I am Rod Wallace, and this is the Zero Noize Podcast, where we engage in progressive discussions about hip hop, music, life, and everything in between with our guests. Again, my name is Rod Wallace. I'm an educator, school leader, and scholar of hip hop. Through my study, I live hip hop as both the subtext and the product of American culture, a medium of liberation, and the literature of the search for freedom. I regard the hip hop album as critical discourse about life and the interpretation of life in America by those who create it. These are the rules of engagement. We discuss albums within the context of personal impact. Art is not valuable if it does not challenge, if it does not ask, if it does not respond. We acknowledge that music decorates time as art decorates space, and it is absolutely deeper than rap. We listen through limitations of genre. We critique intent, content, and delivery of purpose. We pay homage to the artisans as well as the artists, as no album is a one-person show. We underpromise, we overperform. I ask dope people to come visit with me. We talk about who they are, who they have been, and what they do. I ask them to be ready to discuss an album that played a role in them becoming them. And it may not be a hip-hop album like it isn't today. You will not hear the music we will discuss for many reasons during the podcast, but you will never hear it the same afterwards. Therefore, this is a music podcast, but it is a people's podcast. And today, the person is Jay Bishop. What up, Jay Bishop?
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the Zero Noize Podcast. Full disclosure, Jay Bishop is a dirty old man. I talk about the dirty old man all the time, but Jay Bishop has a little bit of a different wrinkle to who he is and what he does. So my first question for you, before I go any further, I'll be remiss not to mention our sponsors. First of all, Leon Speakers, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Thank you for the push. Leon Speakers provides high-end home audio. Check them out at leonspeakers.com. Also sponsored by Grove Studios in Ypsilanti, Michigan, a 24/7 production workspace. You can come there. You can podcast there. You can produce your music there. You can rehearse there. You can learn how to DJ there. You can take your pictures there. You can shoot a video there. Go to grovestudios.space and check out Grove Studios. And of course, Amplify Fellowship, which provides musical support for artists in exchange for service to community organizations. You can visit them and donate at amplify-fellowship.com. So, Jay Bishop.
Yes, sir.
Who is Jay Bishop?
Jay Bishop is an amalgamation. Jay Bishop is a Detroit-born musician, songwriter, producer, DJ, artist who's been fortunate enough to travel around the world and just create music that is from the heart and the soul and kind of reminiscent of a lifetime growing up in Detroit and being influenced by all the things that made Detroit what it was, be it Motown, be it the sounds of the electrifying mojo on the radio, be it just living in the city and just being soaking all that in.
Absolutely. So you've been away from the city for a while.
Yes.
You are overseas at this point.
Yes.
And as you look at it now, do you have what are your thoughts about the music that came out of Detroit during your childhood, or the music that you were engaged in during your childhood?
I think that it pretty much shaped musically how I am and who I am and how I approach music. I came up during, like I said, the time of when Electrifying Mojo was on the air, and during the genesis of what is now known as Detroit techno. So I came up listening to a lot of the music of the Belleville 3, Cybertron, Model 500, Inner City, all that type of stuff that was bubbling under the surface in Detroit. along with all the influences that Mojo was playing, because Mojo would play music from Kraftwerk, and then play Rick James, and then play Prince, and then play the B-52s, all in like the span of a half hour. And I was soaking up all those different musical sources into what I do.
So how did you, so yeah, I don't remember. I was in Flint. I'm an hour to the north. And I remember Mojo, but I remember the Wizard more. Okay. So when it came to engaging in music, other than hearing it on the radio, which obviously had a huge influence on everything that was happening in Detroit at that time, in terms of the growth of techno, like you spoke to, how else did you buy a lot of music? Were you able to buy a lot of music in your area?
Yeah, I bought a lot of music. Well, number one, my brother is a musician, and he's a bass player, and he played in a lot of bands growing up. He's 10 years older than me. So growing up, his bands would practice in our basement. So I'd always just be hanging around the basement, just watching them practice, absorbing them playing music. And of course, I would go out and buy records back when record shops was a thing. Shout out to Chantonique's Records on Woodward in Highland Park. Detroit Audio, if you that old, remember Detroit Audio record stores. Yeah, and like you said, the Wizard, I remember the Wizard. And the Wizard was how I started getting into hip hop. And I cobbled together some old turntables and started to teach myself how to DJ. I went and got the realistic mixer from Radio Shack and started teaching myself how to DJ. And
was it a sound design joint?
It was the realistic joint that it didn't even have a crossfader. It was just like four rows of faders for phonos, and I think it had a mic input and then it had a line input. And yeah, you just had to figure you was doing this to do your little crossfades. so yeah, trying to figure that out. And yeah, so I kind of grew up around just music, like I said, because my brother had various bands he played in, so I was always absorbing music. And then I started taking the saxophone in 5th grade. I started playing the saxophone.
It always seems to start in elementary.
Yeah.
For me, it was the drums, and that curiosity gets kicked in. What is it about? What is it about? You've put out a lot of music, and I know that you went through. Did you go through a period of discovery early on because when you were a teenager, you had the funk, you had the R&B, you had hip hop was coming to prominence. What did you kind of attach yourself to? Like what I guess what did you kind of attach yourself to first?
Well, the funk was there early.
Right.
So I kind of attached myself to that first because, yeah, that's the type of bands my brother played in. He played in funk bands. He played in funk, like, cover bands. So they would play, like, covers of well, they would do, like, some jazz fusion stuff. They would do, like, Mahavishnu Orchestra, Return to Forever stuff. And then they would branch out and start doing, like, some of the funk stuff, like Prince covers. And there was a song they used to always play. It was a band called Dayton. And they had a song called Cutie Pie.
Okay.
You really fly. You caught my eye. So don't be shy. Cutie Pie. They used to play that shit forever.
Okay.
So yeah, the funk was there first, and then as hip hop, like I'm pretty old, so I remember buying the Sugar Hill Gang album at Detroit Audio.
Wow. Wow. Did you have the first 12-inch that my brother bought? My brother is 4 years older than me. And the first 12-inch that my brother bought was Debbie Deb, When I Hear Music, It Makes Me Dance.
Wow.
You remember that record?
I remember that record.
And every time I listen to your music, I think about that record.
Yeah.
It was around the time, it seemed like it was around the time that you kind of been focusing on, but it was a little bit more electro.
Yeah, it was New York electro, because New York electro started coming out around when Planet Rock was really the first big New York electro record, and that sound started becoming prevalent. It was a good 2-3 year run of New York electro records with that type of sound. Planet Patrol, Play at Your Own Risk. The Debbie Deb joint, the
really Lisa and Cold Jam around that same time, right?
Yeah. That was part of that. I wonder if I take you home, or more so, Alice, I Want You Just for Me. That was part of that whole time frame. That New York electro movement was really influential too, because it played like a lot of the techno guys kind of got influenced by New York electro,
right? Because
the use of 808s and the use of like synthesizers.
Right. So out of the crew of all of us, I kind of view you as being the historian. Like you the Maester, kind of like.
Is that because I'm the oldest? I might be. No, I don't know if I'm the oldest.
I don't know. Are you older than Gadget? Are you older than Gadget?
I think I am.
But
I might not be older than Stacks, but I don't know.
I don't think. That's a good one. Shout out to Big Stacks. Stand up. No, don't stand up. He tall. But I view you as being the historian of the group because you are so tapped in to so many things that happened before our heyday of, when you're a teenager, you look at music with a certain nostalgic kind of viewpoint. And when you came to, when you were cutting your teeth, you were a little bit, you were obviously older than us. So we're going to talk about your music and how varied it is. But I'm just interested in, like, when did you first realize? I mean, I know you talked about the funk, having the funk cover band and stuff like that. You were starting to hear music differently than a lot of other people around you, because it's evident in the music that you're creating now. And I'm curious about, when you look at your catalog, when you look at the catalog of releases that you put out, and people, my first interaction with Jay Bishop as far as him releasing music was All That to Get to This, right? But you had been making music way before then, right? So let's talk about when you first started making your own beats, your own music. What did it sound like? Because you had this vast knowledge of all these different periods of music, what, like, did you pattern yourself after first?
Well, the first music I made for myself was, I want to say, I was in high school, so around 16 years old. My brother had a Tascam 4-track, and I was learning how to make music on that 4-track. There's a line in All That to Get to This about me saving up money from a summer job to buy a drum machine. That's the true story, because I worked a summer job. Those globe light posts that was all the rage that's in people's yards in Detroit.
Absolutely, they all the rage in Flint. Everybody and their mama had one in the yard.
I installed those for a summer. I had a great uncle who was an electrician, and I worked for him for a summer, going out with a post hole digger, digging the posts so he can install these lights. And I took that money and saved up and bought a drum machine with it. And then I started making my own music.
J
So
Bishop, the yard globe installer. I got the title of this already. Wow, I didn't know that about you. And I'm telling you, everybody, I feel
they're
like
still there.
everybody
They're
had
still
them.
there.
They might need a coat of paint by this point.
Right.
So yeah, go ahead.
I did that, and I started making songs on a 4-track, and the first songs I made were rap songs. Okay. Me rapping and making drum beats, and I didn't have for samples. I would just cut in like live records as the sample, or until I got a Casio SK1, which had like 1.5 seconds of sample time, and then I would sample stuff on that, and I would make these tapes, and they, nothing ever became. I still got them. I still like here. Let's see. I actually was listening to some of these a week or so ago because I got a tape player recently. But yeah, like joints like remember this shit. This is an old tape. This is an old tape of me rapping from 1989. It says on here 1989.
Yes.
So I was like 17 then. Of me, yes. And I had those. I find time to rhyme because I'm so sublime lyrics and shit.
Right. My first lyric of all time was "Give me a Uzi and I'll blaze it. I won't go to hell, but I might just raise it."
Wow.
That was like the most classic bar I had ever had. Shout out to Double J, aka DJ Infamous. You never forget them songs, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So then I started doing that, and also at the same time, like my versatility. This all sounds like I'm bragging on myself. I hate doing this.
No, that's what this is for you to brag, please.
But my versatility started back then because alongside with doing the rap stuff, I also did like jazz. Mm-hmm. like a jazz funk stuff because I played saxophone, so I got tapes of me doing songs with me playing sax on it. I got old tapes of me singing because a lot of my influence back then was Jam and Lewis, so I would try to write like Jam and Lewis and L.A. Babyface and Teddy Riley. That's the holy trinity of producers.
Okay.
Production groups rather. So yeah, I would write. So I started doing R&B songs. I started doing funk instrumentals, and I was doing rap songs all that time back then, just like on a 4-track. And I had a little band that, we didn't really do nothing, but I had like some musicians I worked with. And I also had a friend who had a 4-track, and we cobbled our little equipment together. He like had a drum machine. He had like a Roland TR 505. And a DX100. Mm-hmm. And then I had my little Casio SK1. I think I had another little Casio keyboard. I had a Yamaha RX drum machine. I can't remember the number. Okay. Maybe a 21. And we cobbled our equipment together at his basement, and we had a little studio. And then I remember we would charge people in the hood like $10 an hour to come record at our little studio. And dudes would come, back then, everybody was trying to be a rapper in high school. So all the little high school dudes would come over and cobble up a little bit of money and come record their demos.
There you go. You had to have an SK, man. I had an SK5, with like 2 seconds of sample time. Yeah. But when you cut it off, the sample was gone.
Yeah. So what I would have to do is like I'd sample a phrase, and then I lay the beat out on the 4-track, 3 minutes of this beat or whatever, and then I sample the phrase, like say the phrase went like thighs high, doom 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 doom. I just sample doom 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 doom, and then for like a whole 3-minute song, I just do a track of me hitting the key, doom 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 doom. Every one that came around. Dun, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just minutes of that, and that's how I put together a loop.
It's about innovation, man. It's about technology. using that technology. Because if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be where we are now. I mean, as far as the equipment, that was the roots of it. Absolutely. You know?
Right.
Absolutely. So you making music off and on. You end up enlisting. Right?
Yeah, I joined the Navy at 19. Well, before that, I did do a year at Eastern Michigan.
Whoop!
In the music program, but I dropped out and joined the military. I dropped. I mean, I'm old enough now to reflect on it. I shouldn't have been. I was just fucking around. I was too busy chasing tail.
Yeah,
it's too much. You know, when you get out of high school and get to college, and you get all that freedom.
Yeah,
man, and yeah, I was chasing everything that moved.
Yeah, I hear you. Now, were you able to, after you enlisted, were you able to still kind of mess around with music when you were in the military?
I did, but we'd go on, like, I was on a ship, so we go out on cruises or whatever for 6 months or whatever. I'd always take my saxophone. So I stayed playing my saxophone the whole time we were out. And some of the money I made from that, I bought a Ensoniq workstation, the Ensoniq SQ1. I bought. I remember it was like $1,400 at the time.
Wow. That was a lot of money at that time.
That was a lot of money, but that thing, you know, it had a 8-track sequencer, and I still have it. It's sitting over here right now.
What was this about, 88, 89?
No, this is like 91.
91?
91, 92.
You know, for people who played the saxophone, you had to know how to play Careless Whisper by George.
Oh, I did. I played it in part of the high school band. High school band.
I mean, all the other arrangements didn't. Rhapsody in Blue and all that. Nah, you had to be able to play Careless Whisper.
We played Careless Whisper. I was in the marching band, so we played the Death Out of Let's Groove.
Okay.
I was in the jazz band, so we played Chameleon. You had to play Chameleon. Boom, 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 boom. You had to play it.
Okay.
So yeah, I played. I was fortunate enough. I played all the saxophones throughout high school. Every year I played a different one. I started on alto, and then because people would leave, and then there'd be a hole there, and I could, like, when I was playing alto, you know how you have chairs in band,
right?
So yeah, I got up to second chair on alto. And then I remember there's a dude named Paul Bryant. He was the first chair. I could never beat him. So the next year, we only had like 2 tenor players, and one of the tenor players left. So I switched to tenor and got first chair in tenor. And then the next year, the baritone player left. We only had one of those. So I said, well, I'll play baritone. And switched to baritone. And then the last year, we had got a soprano. So I started playing soprano sax.
Word up. So you come back from the military, you get, you leave the military. How did you get back involved in actually trying to sequence and make music? Well,
actually, while I was I put an album out.
While you were in the military?
While I was in the military.
What was it called?
It's called the Slept On album.
Okay.
This is 2000, I think.
Okay.
Maybe 2000. Cause so yeah, music, I kept doing it throughout my military career. Like I said, I would buy equipment and I'd have like drum machines and stuff like that I would buy. And when I was assigned to Iceland, I lived in Iceland for 2.5 years, almost 3 years. And when
shout out to the ground being geothermal having geothermal heat, I guess. Is that
Right.
real? Like, is
Yeah,
that?
that's real. It's all you're basically living on a volcano.
Oh, okay.
So
Is
yeah,
it cold?
all
But
the
is it
heat,
cold?
is by the lava underneath the
Oh,
ground provides heat.
okay.
Like you can literally dig a hole in the ground and cook food.
Wow.
So when I was living in Iceland, I was a DJ at the I lived on a Navy base, and we had a club, and I became the DJ at the base club for like the whole time I was there, like 2.5, 3 years. I was DJing, so I was still doing music and still involved in music that way. And then when I left there, I was in DC, and when I was in DC, that's when I put an album out.
Okay.
And it was interesting. That's back then when the big thing was you had to go to disc makers and get your CDs printed up,
Right.
and then go to stores and do consignments and all that type of stuff. So yeah, I did a rap album. It was an experience. Nothing became of it, but it was a good experience.
Is this maker still in business?
Yes, they still are. Stax uses it.
They sent me back my first master and was like, you got to take some off, because I had like like somebody was scratching, and they took that scratch part off my record, and I was pissed.
Was it for copyright or something?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't sample the rest of the record though. It's oddly enough. So let's fast forward a little bit.
Okay.
How did you connect with Dirty Old Men?
Gadget.
So were you following Gadget at the time?
I was following Gadget, and he would do these beat tapes. And there was one called the Teddy Pendergrass beat tape. Okay. And I submitted a beat to it, and it made the beat tape. Okay. So then I started corresponding with Gadget, and then he invited me to join the Scratch Magazine Hangout, and then the rest is history.
Was the Hangout already happening before you came?
Yes, it was. I don't know how long it was going on, but yeah, it was happening before I came.
Okay. Gadget, man, you got to give credit, man. I remember watching his videos when I first got back into beat making, and just seeing the process, seeing Kev Brown, the real producers of the DMV, where they just sat around and argue. I thought Maverick was Gadget's brother or something. I thought they was the same person. I don't know, but yeah, that was just a real organic thing, man. It was real organic. So you putting out music. Did you ever get involved in CMA?
No.
Okay.
No, I never got involved in CMA, but I kept tabs on it, and I would show up. I'd watch all the shows, and
okay. So
I think I participated in one show once because Kashif invited me to. But yeah, I never joined CMA formally.
So what I want you to know is all that to get to this, which is still sitting right there, looking at me, facing out towards me, was one of the first projects that I mastered after I got Ozone 6. And it kind of changed what I thought that I was capable of doing. And I give you a lot of credit for giving me the ability to do that. All that to get to this is a classic album in my book, not only for personal reasons, but because you were very transparent on it, especially on the last joint. Let's talk about writing that record. They say that the records that are the most honest are the easiest ones to write. Do you agree with that?
Nah. I think that writing that record was a journey for me, as in I wanted to. First off, that record didn't start out the way it ended up. The original concept for that record was going to be a production record. It's going to be a Quincy Jones type of thing. where I was gonna have people just rap over my beats, and maybe I would rap every now and then. But it was hard to get all that coordinated and people to do what you wanted them to do. So I ended up just I said, well, I'm just gonna write this myself.
Right.
And then it became more personal because I was going through some personal things at the time. I was having some struggles with my marriage, having some struggles with my finances, and all kinds of things were going on. So as I started writing the record, it just slowly became more darker and more personal. And that wasn't the original intention, but sometimes it just things have a way of working out that way. So
it capped. So just like we talked about at the beginning, it kind of decorated that time for you, and
yes,
it kind of put a time capsule on that period of your life. And then you moved to Japan, and this extra prolific type period starts. Let's kind of go through it real quick for the people.
Okay.
You had the Amp Soul record. You had the More Beats, Less Bullshit record. Was that
I think that was before Amp Soul.
Yeah, I'm not doing it in order.
Okay.
But you had the More Beats, Less Bullshit. Did you have 1 and 2 or just 1?
There's 2.
2. And all the way up to what was next after that?
I think the first one was Chill Well,
which was it when you categorize it, it was more.
It's kind of like a lo-fi meets ambient jazz type of thing.
Okay.
Like lo-fi drums and beats, but I'm doing keyboard solos and stuff over the top of it. So it's like a kind of lo-fi jazz fusion. So then the More Beats, Less Bullshit. Then I think I put out like the Tay Lee song. That Tay Lee song was one of the original ones for All That to Get to This, actually. But since the album changed, I decided not to use it. And I worked with Sam Poetry on some stuff. And then,
Right.
Then Amp Soul, I think, might be after that.
No, because you did the first More Beats, Less Bullshit. Then you did Amp Soul. You still talk to J Pass? Shout out to J Pass.
Yeah. We're going to do the next Amp Soul.
J Pazzle. Good people.
Yeah, eventually we're going to do the Amp Soul. Hopefully this year.
And then you did Watts Club.
Yeah, Watts Club.
And then you did Oscillator Oasis. Now, what was the intent of Watts Club? Well, before you answer that, let's back up. We talked about Sunset Bump being more atmospheric lo-fi with keys on top of it. More Beats, Less Bullshit. What was the purpose of that to you? Beats, Less Bullshit, I guess.
Well, that was my response to the lo-fi bro-fi community. That we're lo-fi, it's just boom bap.
Right.
So that was my response to look, this is just a pure boom bap project, and I'd have like sound bites in there, like especially that first one had more sound bites about like cassette culture, and because lo-fi people was talking about bringing cassettes back and stuff about low fidelity. So yeah, it was a comment on lo-fi culture.
I still have a beat of yours from that around that area called Curtains that I've never used, and I had a song that I wrote for V Soul for that record during that time, and I never have had a chance to get it recorded. But it's still in the universe. And then Amp Soul was the collaboration with J Pass. That was more urban contemporary, so to speak. Yeah,
it was because I had been a fan of J Pass's music.
Yeah,
for a while. I had like this before I even knew that anybody knew him. I had found he had made a record called No Matter the Weather that I had been following, and then I was talking with Kill, and J-Pass and Kill are cool, and J-Pass would be on Kill's show. So I was like, oh, okay, he's kind of within the circle. So of people I know, so I hit him up, and then we started. Yeah, he started hanging out at CMA also around that time.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I hit him up and said, hey man, let's work on something, and we put it together, and we just, you know, the typical way you work on the internet these days, we sending files back and forth.
Right, the way we work normally. Then you had the Art of Dirt, which was another lo-fi beat, boom bap type thing. Then you had Sightseeing, and that for me, that was kind of you becoming something different.
Yes.
You know, that's when I knew that you were, and it's ironic that, you know, the cover is a temple. Was that a Shinto temple?
Yeah, it's either a Buddhist temple or a Shinto temple. And
I remember that was kind of the point at which I saw you becoming something different. What was the purpose of Watts Club? That was all. Was that like old house records?
Well, not old as far as like what I wrote them a long time ago, or old,
no, like classic. What was Watts Club about?
It was about kind of circling back to what we were first talking about with Electrifying Mojo. It was me kind of paying homage to that music that I grew up on, the techno side, because I had never really done it. Like I was doing hip hop, I was doing all this other stuff, but I never really done the music that I actually constantly listened to as I grew up. So I wanted to do something toward that. And yeah, that album is I could say it's a departure point, because I tried things on the album I hadn't tried before. I was singing. Like I sang a little bit on all that to get to this, but yeah. But Sightseeing was me actually doing, like, trying to get a whole song done singing.
Yeah.
And doing just that style of music, the house, the techno, and really committing to it. So yeah, I do love, that's one of my favorite things I've done is that album. That's an EP rather.
How did you feel when you started singing? Like, how did you develop and build your confidence to be able to sing in a way that you could be, because singing is different than rapping.
Yes.
You know, with rapping, you know, there's a little bit more leeway about how you sound. But in singing, it's a little bit different. How did you develop your confidence as a singer?
Hell, I'm not sure I have, even to now. I mean, I got to the point where I had all these ideas. I had all these songs that I had in my brain. And I was like, I can't wait till I get to the point where I could work with somebody, I could produce somebody, I could get somebody to sing these songs, I could do this, that. And eventually I just got sick of waiting for this inevitable muse to show up. This inevitable, like I'm a Timberland looking for my baby girl, and Aaliyah ain't walking through the door. So I'm like, I want to get these songs out, and a lot of I know we share this throughout the crew. I got a lot of influences from Jazzy Jeff's famous "Die Empty" speech.
Absolutely.
So I'm like, I need to get these songs out. I ain't got nobody to sing them. I guess I'm gonna have to just sing them myself. I know I'm not a great singer, but I know what a note is. I know when a note is on or off or close to on or whatever. I can sing it enough to get the idea across and hope that the song is good enough. And then honestly, I don't listen to a lot of music of the current time, but when I do, I listen to some of these dudes that's out here singing. I'm like, if this nigga can get over, what am I worried about? I tell you the song that did it. Well, I don't know who the artist is, but that song is that Lifetime song. Whatever that song is, when that nigga doing that shit.
Young Thug.
Oh my God.
Gang. Yes.
When I heard that and I said, this is acceptable. Oh, what the fuck am I worried about?
I hear you. So then you did Oscillator Oasis, where now you had done Sightseeing and then you followed it up with Oscillator Oasis, right, which was even further in that direction.
Right.
Because then you had proven that you could do it.
Yes. Sightseeing was the
toe in the water.
The test pressing. Yeah, it was just seeing, I'm gonna throw this out. Can I actually complete something of that sound or whatever? And then Oscillator Oasis was okay. Well, now I can go full throttle on it and see what I could do when I put my foot in it.
Now, mind you, all this is being released on Late Pass, and as a label, Watch Club was an act. Jay Bishop was an act. Amp Soul was an act. So then after that, you came back with Feature Presentation. Mm-hmm. And Feature Presentation was more, I want to say, standard Jay Bishop.
Yeah, it's just, I had a bunch of beats, just kind of collecting the dust on the hard drive. Right. And I was like, well, I want to get these out. I found the ones I found that was the most cohesive. And I said, well, I want to put this out. And it didn't really fit. Like, this whole idea of different art, me being different artists, I got from Madlib. For how Madlib would have for every type of music he did, he had a different pseudonym for it.
Absolutely.
So, the Feature Presentation stuff, it didn't fit anything else. It didn't fit Chill Will. It didn't fit More Beats, Less Bullshit. So I said, well, I'll just put this under my name.
Mm-hmm. Then you did another beat tape. And then you did another Watch Club project. And
I did a single. Yeah, that's a single.
Right. Then Conversations Online.
Mm-hmm.
What set that album apart for you?
Well, Conversation Online that's the single. That's from Steppers.
My fault.
Yeah.
So Steppers was next, yeah. But Steppers was another. Steppers had a different feel than everything else that you had put out to me.
Right. Steppers was I have been listening to, there's a burgeoning movement called Modern Funk that was kind of godfathered by Dame Funk. And then you got a lot of artists, West Coast artists like XL Middleton, mm-hmm. and you got a lot of overseas artists, people from France, people from Italy, who kind of latched on to that old school 80s boogie funk sound and are reinterpreting it with today's technology and keeping that sound alive. And I always had been listening to that and following those dudes. And my earliest influences were Jam and Lewis, LA and Babyface, Teddy Riley. And I always wanted to write songs like them. And this was my opportunity to go in that direction and write the type of songs that I used to write when I was in my early years, when I was writing R&B songs in my teenage and early 20s. These were the types of songs I would write, and I wanted to. I was like, well, this is a opportunity for me to express that side of myself. I mean, I got all the other stuff out. Like, I had all these sides to myself I wanted to get out, and this is what one of the oldest ones I had that I wanted to finally express. And I never could do it because I was worried about my singing. I was worried about I'm going to need a singer to do this. But Sightseeing and Oscillator Oasis gave me the confidence to be like, you know what? I could actually do that R&B album I always wanted to do. I could
Mhm.
actually do that funk project I always wanted to do, but I never did because I was afraid to sing the songs.
And now in the midst of all this, I mean, while you're putting out project after project after project, your chops is getting better. You're learning how to play bass. You're becoming a better engineer. You're becoming a better producer to the point where you're like, yeah, I can do what I've always wanted to do. Like for me, my dream is to make a Public Enemy album. You know, like a Bomb Squad, Public Enemy, first Yo-Yo album type album. You know, which is hard to do because of all the samples and all that stuff. But you know, still it's an attractive option for me. So Steppers was a hell of an accomplishment because of the fact that you were able to capture a period of time very, very clearly in listening to that album. Now, you've referred to it as boogie. You've referred to it. It's also known as electro funk. It's also known as post disco. And how do you transition from that? Because in my opinion, that was the best project that you have done so far. And now you transitioned away from that on Cognac and Ballroom to a degree. It's almost like a natural progression from what I can hear, from just as Steppers captured that 81, 82, 83, Evelyn Champagne King, BT Express, Kashif, as we'll talk about tonight, stuff. Cognac and Ballroom is a little bit past that. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, it's further. It's going further into like the late 80s, early 90s.
Yes.
Type of vibe, whereas Steppers was kind of look like early half of the 80s. Then this is more like the way I picture it in my head is they're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that as in Steppers was my backyard barbecue album. We having a cookout. You're gonna put this on, the uncle's gonna dance and two-step, everybody's gonna have a good time. And then Cognac and Ballroom is the nighttime album where you and your lady getting G'd up and you go into the cabaret.
Right. So Cognac and Ballroom is going to be released on March 5th. Is that correct?
Yes.
March 5th, 2021. Talk about, you know, what's the first single on the project? You know, why should, you know, other than what we obviously have talked about in terms of it framing that time period, why should people check it out?
This album is, I think this album is a growth in my songwriting, in that I really wanted to embrace writing complete songs that went places, that started here and kind of moved and went places. Like, I think there's a lot more bridges on this album than maybe it was on Steppers. And I wanted to embrace the vibe of, like I said, that nighttime, we're going to dance. Like, I know about the Detroit culture of cabarets, where people would rent out a hall, like a union hall, especially in Detroit. It was always a banquet hall or a union hall, and you get you a DJ, you get maybe a band, maybe a comedian, MC or whatever, and you have somebody selling plates, and you sell the setups because you didn't want to have to deal with liquor laws, so you sell like mixers and ice and Coke and all that, and people would BYOB and bring their own liquor, and you have tables and you have a dance floor, and people will come just have a good evening. And like, that still happens like today. That's still a thing, and people will go out and they would do what's called ball in Detroit. You know, Chicago is called stepping. or whatever. It's pretty much the same thing. It's ballroom where you couples will, you know, do a little thing and twirl and dance and all that, and then everybody will come out and do all the hustles and the line dances. I remember like a Detroit classic is Stevie Wonder's "My Eyes Don't Cry."
Yes.
You put that dun 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 dun. As soon as them horns come on, the dance floor fill up, and they start doing that hustle. There's a specific hustle for that specific song.
Yes.
So I wanted to embrace that culture.
Okay.
That's a kind of a theme with all my stuff. All my things are embracing a certain culture or vibe or idea.
A time. It's built around time. Now, you've gotten some really great responses to your projects overseas. You're overseas, but I'm saying especially in Europe. Can you talk about like how you established those relationships and, you know, talk about how those relationships have panned out?
Well, I reached when I first started the concept of doing steppers, I had a song called That Feeling. That was actually the first song for that project.
Can't get enough
right
of your body.
And I did that song and I finished it. And I actually said, this is very rare I do this, but I said to myself, this is a great fucking song. God damn, I impressed myself. I was like, God damn, this sounds good. My voice sounds good. This shit sounds good. I don't want to just put this shit out to die on the vine. I want to see if I can move the needle on this. So, like I said, I have been following all these modern funk artists and labels, and I reached out to a label called Sleepers Records. And it's run by a guy based out of Italy named Ivan Makvo. So I reached out to him and sent him the record. And I said, hey, you know, I got this kind of modern funk vibe record. I want to do something with it. I think it's really good. Do you think you could do something with it? And he said, I want to put this out. So we put out the record on his label, and his label has a pretty good following. He is like all the modern funk dudes go to him for mastering. He's mastered albums for the APX. The APX actually, he releases their vinyl on Sleepers on his label, and he does their mastering. He does mastering for XL Middleton. He does mastering for a guy called Mofak. He does mastering for a modern funk artist out of Brooklyn named Temu. So all the modern funk dudes kind of go to him for mastering, and he runs this label. So I put out 2 singles on his label, and through him, I started building connections and with all the DJs. Like there's a whole crew of DJs who specialize in playing modern funk music all throughout Europe, Amsterdam, France. And I just started building these connections and reaching out. And when I was getting steppers ready, I sent out advanced copies to all these DJs, and they started adding them to their mix shows and started adding them to their playlists. And I just kept these relationships with these guys. And that's what it's all about. It's about building relationships.
Yeah, building and maintaining too.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all your projects are not on streaming, correct?
Most of them are.
Most of them are, but you've been vocal about the Bandcamp versus streaming kind of discussion. Am I correct?
Yes, I'm a Bandcamp champion.
Okay. Do you feel as though streaming is taking advantage of the fact that there are so many of us now who have access? Are they taking advantage of that and kind of monopolizing? I mean, we really only instead of only having, 5 or 6 or 7 labels, now there's only 3 or 4 streaming services that the majority of people use to get access to your music.
I think streaming is, people are looking at streaming the wrong way. People are looking at streaming as a money-making endeavor, and it's not. And If you look at it that way, you're going to be highly disappointed because it's not made for you, the artist, to make money. It's made for the record companies to make money. It's made for the streaming corporations themselves to make money. They're not concerned with you making money. It's the same way you have to look at streaming the same way you looked at radio. Radio is not designed for artists to make money. Radio is designed for the record companies to make money and for the radio stations to make money and the corporate entities who own the record companies and the radio stations to make money. It's not designed for the artists to make money. So you have to look at it as what it truly is, and it's advertisement. I approach streaming as advertisement. I approach streaming as, look, you can listen to my song here, and these people can add it to playlists where other people can discover it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I want you to come to latepastmusic.bandcamp.com and get the music there.
Right. I look at it as like an archiving.
Right.
You know, I'll put it on Bandcamp. We have a project right now on Bandcamp that will probably just be on Bandcamp maybe another, well, the way things is going, it's going to be on there for another couple weeks or whatever. And then, you know, put it on streaming, put another couple joints on it, and give that to the people who bought the first one. And, you know, go from there.
Right.
It's very difficult to, you almost have to use streaming to, yeah, like you said, to be your advertisement.
Right.
For something different.
Because a lot of people, your average, quote unquote, average consumer probably doesn't even know what Bandcamp is.
Right.
To be honest. Bandcamp is for music nerds.
Right. And
so you have to educate them about, look, this is what this is. If you really want to support me, this is the best way to do it. And you have to also incentivize them. That's why a lot of people do merch on Bandcamp. They do vinyl editions of their record. They do cassette edition. They do all these special editions of their record on Bandcamp to incentivize people to come here and partake in my music this way instead of depending on streaming. Not to say that streaming isn't cool. We understand you want to, when you get in your car, you want to hook up your phone on the Bluetooth and play Spotify. We get that. And I want my music to be there for you to listen to. But when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of, look, I want to support this artist, you have to explain to them, this is how you do it.
If Bandcamp had a better, I'm gonna be honest, if Bandcamp had a better interface, a better mobile interface and stuff, I think that they would be better off. I don't know if they would be able to compete with the big boys, but it would definitely be a game changer for independent artists.
I think the thing I'm most afraid of is, like, a lot of people talking about we need playlisting on Bandcamp. Depends on how you do it. If it's where I could take like all the music I bought and go through it and make a playlist of all the music I bought that's just for me to listen to, I accept that. I'm down with that. But I don't want a playlisting system where it's public playlisting and then you start having what happens on Spotify with influencer culture and everybody's trying to get on the quote unquote popular playlist. I don't want Bandcamp turning into Spotify Junior. This is what I'm getting at.
I hear you. They definitely have to do it in an innovative way.
Right.
Now, before we talk about Kashif, you've been categorized as being mad. You know, you were on Chicago Fire, an album we put out a long time ago. You said basically that if it's somebody that's going in on Twitter about some records some records that don't make any sense or they're not quality, it's gonna be you. In so many words, you said it differently than I said it. And what I thought about when we decided to do this interview, I thought about it like, you know, I think about all these ideas around somebody, and I know, you know, how talented you are as a musician and an artist and a songwriter and stuff like that. And I know we tease you about being mad, but I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think that you're mad. I think that you're frustrated. And I don't even know if it's a frustration that tinkles into, that kind of wavers into your real life. But I think that the truth is you see that there is a lot of capacity for people to make fantastic music out in the world. There's access to resources, access to all of this stuff to make fantastic music. And the focus is on people who forsake the opportunity to make great music because everything is about attention. It's about finding what will give you the most attention. Like I just look at the challenges, for example. I mean, I don't even think that we've scratched the surface as far as what TikTok and other what I call meme-based opportunities are doing to change the face of how music is heard. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I think we've barely scratched the surface on. But the thing is, like, I think that, like, a lot of what my perceived madness or whatever, a lot of 90% of it is jokes, because when you boil it all down, I really don't care.
Yeah.
But I do have a sense of frustration in the fact that I think that the art of becoming good at craft has been lost. And due to the advances of technology, due to the loss of education, music education in schools particularly, due to the instant gratification, instant viral star qualities of today's entertainment industry, I think that a lot of the grind has been lost, and everybody's trying to shortcut the grind, but the grind is what makes you good, is what makes you quality. It makes you take pride in your work. It makes you believe in yourself. It makes you want to be better. And I think a lot of that's what frustrates me about today's music, because technology wise, if we had the technology we had when I was starting out, I would have loved it, but I don't know if I would be the quality of musician that I am.
Because you spent the time.
Because I spent the time grinding and figuring out how to do that. And, I'm a particular breed of person. I read liner notes. I study chord progressions, and everybody's not gonna do that. So.
I understand. Music is a product of marketing and algorithms at this point, and it can be tough. I just look at how you've developed as a musician while incrementally changing your workflow. Like, you've tried to master your workflow at every juncture, and you add small things. We tease you about still using the micro for everything, but you mastered that. And truthfully, what I've always said is as soon as they figure out a way to allow, for me personally, if I can change the tempo of a sample without changing the pitch, then it's infinite possibilities. And I think we're so quick to jump from gear to gear to gear to gear to gear that we don't necessarily take the time like you have taken the time. And you grew as an engineer by learning on your own, by mastering things, by trial and error, to the point where you're a completely self-sufficient artistic entity that just requires the ability to for somebody to assist you in getting your music heard. That's what I see.
I mean, there are pros and cons to that though, because it would be nice to have more people to bounce ideas off of. It would be nice to have someone in the studio with me to help shape and mold things. It would be nice to, like, people say I've grown, but I'm a slight perfectionist when it comes to it. So every time I listen to my own stuff, I constantly hear, well, that could have been better.
But that's natural.
Yeah,
that's natural. I mean, if you ask Aaron Rodgers, you know, what went well, what didn't go well, he's probably gonna tell you the three incompletions he threw versus the 24 completions he threw.
Right.
So that's natural. But I can't help but wonder that, you know, you are in Japan, you know, you are, not to, you know, I don't want to give away all your business, but you are in Japan. You don't have a lot of people who are around you physically making music that you're collaborating with. And what you're saying is that has assisted you in becoming more self-sufficient because you had no choice.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
That's very much true.
That's interesting. So you went to Japan and you went into, tell me about your relationship with this record, because I see you in Japan, you know, taking records like the one that you chose to talk about today and like literally splitting it apart, like the what's it called? You know how like a diagram of an engine, and trying to reconstruct that engine. You chose Kashif, released on September 14th, 1983. I ain't gonna ask you how old you was. I was 6.
Well, honestly, I you say the release date, but I didn't really come into knowing this record until much later on.
Absolutely. Understood.
So I chose this record because it relates to the record I'm putting out now. Like, when you asked me to pick a record, I had various thoughts of what I wanted to pick. And like the first thought I had was Chucky Booker's debut album, because that I listened to that consistently, like when I was like 17.
Right.
But I wanted to pick something that was more related to the sound that's on this record. And the first thing I thought of was Kashif, because when we were talking about Boogie, and yes, is post-disco. Boogie is basically a result of the backlash of disco music. And you could simplify it and say it slowed down disco, but it's that style of music that it doesn't have the 4 on the floor, and it's slowed down. It's slowed down. Like disco would, you say, was like 120 and up, you know. Boogie would be more in like the high 90s, 97,
absolutely,
96, 100.
Absolutely.
And it introduced a lot of synthesizer elements. And when I think of Kashif and I think of this album, I think about synth basses, because Kashif was one of the early pioneers of using synth bass lines in R&B records.
Absolutely.
And he created this sound that, like, the first 4 songs on this album is pretty much the sound I was going for on Cognac and Ballroom.
It's
Don't Stop the Love is my song, My Bad Habit, on this album.
It's very clear. The influence is very clear. From the synthesized bass, which at this time, I don't know the complete history of MIDI, but he was one of the large, on a broad scale, as far as Black music, he was relatively an early adopter,
right,
of MIDI. It's as well as Stevie Wonder.
right.
Stevie Wonder and the work that he did with synthesizers in the mid to late 70s was groundbreaking, but Kashif really took that. Kashif was mostly a keys guy. He played piano, I want to say, he played keys with BT Express.
Correct.
Before kind of splitting off onto his own.
He was a teenager then. I think he was like 16.
Right.
He was in BT Express.
Right. And I'm trying to recall whether or not his work with Evelyn Champagne King that predated his solo work.
I can't remember. I think it was.
I believe so.
Yeah, it probably did, but all that stuff kind of is around the same time to me, because that was his sound. You knew you heard a record he produced. You knew he was one of the first dudes that had, well, that's his sound.
Right. So yeah, it was the post-disco, it was the boogie era. One of the things that I noticed, because I went back and I listened to it, and so this funny thing happens that when somebody picks a record for me to listen to, it always sounds different. And that's why I say that during the intro of the show. Like, we could sit up and talk about a record and I don't have to play it during this show. But when you listen to it again, you're going to hear what we're talking about. And one of the things that stuck out to me was how busy the bass was.
Yes.
Bass was busy. Boom, 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 boom. And it was just keys.
Mm-hmm.
Chords via the, guitars or just basic chords or whatever. But all of the movement was in the bass and in the drums, in the cymbals and in the drums. And then the other thing that stuck out to me, before I leave that bass, do you find that in creating this type of music, a lot of times, are you starting with the bass jumping around like that, or are you starting with keys?
I start with, for the most part, I start with chords.
Chords, I mean, yeah.
Yes, I start with keys. I start with chords for pretty much 90 to 95%. I think for every song on this album started from chords, except My Bad Habit. I think My Bad Habit actually started with the bass line, but everything else I think started with chords. Especially
coming in like I guess it would be like a quarter note early. Be like doom, 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 doom. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's almost every record. And then I think about, when I listen to it, I think about the Patrice Rushen. I think about Sky. I think about, and they all kind of had that similar feeling with chords and a real busy bass line. And then another thing that stuck out to me is the arrangement of these songs. If you notice and you listen to it, these are all R&B songs that's 4.5 minutes long or longer. Mm-hmm. Because they go through so many different segments. Before we started, we listened to Stone Love. I think it was Stone Love we was listening to.
You were listening to Don't Stop the Love.
Don't Stop the Love. Yeah. Don't Stop the Love had an intro, then a chorus, then a verse, then a chorus, then a bridge, then a chorus, then like a post-chorus sound, then like a solo, then it had another chorus, and then it had a vamp. Mm-hmm. So when you're arranging your records, are you going through, a lot of times when we work on hip hop records, a lot of times we do two sequences. Right. 2 sequences, and you can filter the sample in sequence A and do some different things with the beat or some mutes or whatever and keep it moving. But these songs, we're not even talking about songwriting or even writing obviously you're not writing keys or writing arrangements in terms of actual individual instruments. Everything is electronic pretty much and just by feel, I assume. But how are you working through all of these different parts? You said that you just started adding bridges on Sleepers. Am I correct?
On Steppers. Oh yeah, on Steppers. Yeah,
I called it Sleepers. I'm sorry, Steppers.
Well, there's a bridge. All that to get to this.
Yes.
On the song, let's find out. There's a bridge with a keyboard solo in it.
There is. There absolutely is. So, I remember that.
So yeah, I've always wrote with bridges, but you know, like you said, in hip hop, that doesn't really factor. But with me doing this R&B stuff, and with like the electronic, the house music, you really didn't factor. But with this stuff, when my approach to writing is somewhat formulaic, but it's not like I know that I'm going to have an intro. I know I'm going to have a verse section. I know I'm going to have a pre-chorus. Now it depends on the song and the feel of how I'm writing it, whether that pre-chorus would be a continuation of like the verse, or if I'm going to make a change in the pre-chorus. And then the bridge is another thing is based on the feel. Like every song doesn't have a bridge, every song doesn't need a bridge, but some songs, if I feel like a bridge would be a good segue or a good switch up, I'll add a bridge. Sometimes a bridge may be a bridge with vocals. Like on this album, Love You All the Way Round has a vocal bridge in it. But then I have another song where a bridge might just be a keyboard solo. Like Mr. Movie has a bridge that's a keyboard solo. So it's all feel. It's all feel.
Another thing I noticed in the drum programming is that there's always a super loud clap on the 2, and then a lower clap on the 4. And I listened and I thought about. I mean, go back and listen to it. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. Okay.
You're like doom.
You know what? Yeah. You know what? You kind of right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What did you notice about when you listen to records like that? What did you notice about the mix that you chose to build into your workflow in terms of not only getting in, I mean, so we got the songwriting, we got the arrangement, we got the right instruments and sounds involved, but then the mix also has to be the same. The emphasis on certain things has to be similar to that style as well. What did you notice about the mix of those records?
Well, if you said sounds, because the first thing I was going to say is sound selection.
Oh yeah,
which is very important to if you want to capture a certain time frame to use sounds from that time frame. But as far as like the mix, is that like the way they mix records then and the way they mix records today is two totally different schools. In that, like when I mastered this record, and me and you have had this discussion offline before about how loud your master should be. When I did Steppers and this record, I did not master this to the level of what most records are at today. I wanted a more dynamic master, and I wanted a quieter master because it fell in line of the albums of that day. Now, it didn't go as quiet as what an album back then would have been mastered. Mm-hmm. And I didn't go as loud as what I would today. I met in the middle. Mm-hmm. So I went kind of halfway between how loud an album is today and how loud an album was then. But like I said, I just wanted a little bit more dynamics, a little bit less brick wall in my mix. Because I wanted to be true to kind of how records were back then. I'd say that the difference between how I mix records now and trying to add that sound, like somebody back then would say my kick got too much bass in it, but I came up on hip hop, so I gotta have heavy. I gotta have a heavy kick.
The kick still thump on the new joint. The kick is thumping for real, and I'm still kicking myself in the ass about the how I managed your low end on all that to get to this. But yeah, that kick still thumping the right way. Don't get it twisted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wanted that. I wanted to bring. Okay, I'm trying to I wanted to take that sound but update it to today. So yeah, you gotta have a heavier kick. You gotta have a kind of the bass is a little heavier, but the bass was kind of heavy back then. Like you heard the bass on that Kashif record. It was clear. It cut through.
Oh yeah.
And I want my bass kind of cuts through on this. The only thing different on this album I did mix wise, say like compared to Steppers, is I tried to add more polish. And personally, it's one of the things I still mull over in my mind. When I nitpick this album, I'm nitpicking the amount of polish and air I added to this album because it's airy. And it's much more like, especially in the vocals, they're a lot more airy than the vocals were on Steppers, because I was trying to add I wanted like 90s music. Jodeci Records had that polish.
Yes.
And I was trying to add some of that sheen and polish to this record. And I think I might have overdid it, but
you know what I noticed? I haven't in all, I haven't listened to Cognac and Ballroom in here. But when I listened to Kashif, I heard a lot of reverb on at least the drum bus. A lot of plate. I mean, and it's subtle, and you probably don't, the untrained ear won't hear. I don't know if it's played or not, but the reverb is definitely strong there. And it just reminded me of how dry I mix drums. I don't mix with a lot of reverb on drums.
Well, they were trying that because he was using that Lindrum, and Lindrum samples by itself and Oberheim DMX samples by themselves are dry as shit. So if you want to add life to them, you got to add some reverb. That's why every time you hear old funk records with the clap's always got reverb on it, because you're trying to add that life to that clap. Right.
Absolutely. So here's the seminal question. Fill in the blank. Without Kashif, there would be no what?
Boogie.
You know what I was going to say?
What?
Without Kashif, there would be no Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Without Kashif, there would be no Control album by Janet Jackson.
That's interesting. Now, what makes you say that?
Because I feel like so much of where they were was in those leads and those chords. The bass wasn't necessarily as active as it was in the Boogie records. And a lot of the movement was in the mid-range. In my opinion, I think about a record like, like a record like Pleasure Principle. There was a lot of movement in the bass. But that's, for me, that's a direct connector to what we heard from Boogie and funk itself. So that's why I say you had to have a Kashif in order to have a Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis that kind of streamline that sound with drum machines. Because I feel like a lot of Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis is Kashifish with more complex drum programming. But that's just me. You know what I'm saying? And then for me, without Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, there is no You know, I don't think that Babyface may have sounded the same.
Oh, definitely. That's definitely true.
And obviously Teddy Riley. So yeah, it's all linear for me because it's all about influence for me. But yeah, that's Kashif.
I want to ask you, just on the hip hop head thing, did you know the samples on the Kashif record?
No.
Not
off top of my head. Give me one.
There's a song on side B called The Mood, and it's sampled by EPMD on EPMD's first album, the Kayla Boss record that's on EPMD's first album.
Nah, I missed it. I need to listen to
that.
Yeah, I need to listen to that again.
That's on the Kashif record.
I definitely need to listen to that. Did Kashif do Phyllis Hyman?
No, I don't think he did the Phyllis Hyman record.
Okay.
He did Champagne King, he did Melba Moore, he did George Benson, he did Melissa Morgan.
I think Living All Alone is my favorite record of the 1980s.
That album or just that song?
Just that song.
Okay.
Just the chord work during the vamp just does something. And the bling, 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 bling. Man, come on, dog. But yeah, nevertheless, won't want to take no flowers away from Kashif. Kashif did pass away in 2016.
He wrote a very important book.
Yes, he did.
In his later life, he became a college professor, and he also wrote a book called Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business.
And that may end up being his biggest contribution to music, although we just talked about him and his influence on other people, because I remember that book in the late 90s. You know, in the early 2000s. Never read the entire thing, never went, you know what I'm saying? But he tried to give people the game probably because of the fact that he had won and he had lost. And didn't want people to go through the same thing. So again, flowers go to Kashif. You know what I'm saying? I remember seeing Kashif's name in the Jets top 20 singles or whatever. Back when I used to get my hair cut. Shout out to Clint's Barbershop on the south side of Flint. And I never really got into Kashif until today. Thanks to you.
Thanks. One more Kashif nugget. You Give Good Love, Whitney Houston's first single.
Yes, he did do that record. And that was my joint on that record. I didn't realize that she had 2 joints on there with Jermaine Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah. A slow joint and a fast joint. You are absolutely right about You Give Good Love, dude. Absolutely. That was my joint on that first record. Yeah. And that was everybody's introduction really to Whitney, though, wasn't it?
It was. This was the first single.
Oh, man. That was a great record. But yeah, again, we want to give our shouts out to Kashif. Thank you for all that you did for music. We want to make sure that we shout out. First of all, we got to make sure we shout out Jay Bishop. Thank you, Jay, for joining us today and kicking it with me. Cognac and Ballroom.
Okay, hold up. Before we leave, I had this discussion with somebody else.
Okay.
What is the proper pronunciation of that word? Because I say cognac. You say cognac. I heard somebody say cognac.
I say cognac. Cognac. We're probably all wrong.
Yeah, it's probably some French person mad as shit right now.
Cognac. Cognac and Ballroom will be released on March 5th on Bandcamp at latepass.bandcamp.com. latepassmusic.bandcamp.com. You can pre-order it now. Make sure that you check it out. Check out all his other releases. And notice the progression. Like I said, the only thing Jay Bishop hasn't done at this point is to make a jazz album.
I've thought about it.
You know, that's the only thing that's left.
Definitely thought about it.
or a rock album.
Thought about that. I've thought about that too.
Okay. And you haven't made like a bona fide pop album either, but we don't want that. Not yet. Okay.
Yeah, I look, if I find me a Billie Eilish, it's over for you niggas.
Right. So yeah, Cognac and Ballroom, March 5th. Also check out Steppers, great project from last year. Just straight funk. If you like funk, check out Jay Bishop. Check out Late Past Music. We want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Leon Speakers, leonspeakers.com, Grove Studios. We want to thank everybody at Grove Studios for providing the punch for us to make this work. MindState Marketing, Amplify Fellowship, Dirty Old Men, The Biscuit Factory. Where's the mascot for the Biscuit Factory? I just saw him in the background. Yes, absolutely. Thanks everybody for supporting the podcast, and we'll see you soon. You got any shout outs, Jay Bishop, you want to give?
I just want to thank everybody for listening to me ramble and supporting my music. And I'm just gonna keep doing what I do and trying to make things happen. And shout out to Dirty Old Men, of course, because that's the collective, that's the crew. They keep me going, and I appreciate y'all.
No doubt. And follow him at J Bishop Funk on Instagram.
Instagram, Twitter. I'm messing around with Twitch a little bit.
Okay.
YouTube, everything's J Bishop Funk.
Absolutely. And you'll catch some beat videos, some bass guitar playing, probably a rant here and there. J Bishop has a classic rant about Rhythm Roulette. That probably got like 15,000 views by now. But yeah, everybody, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Peace.